The Paradox ship. Captain Sarah Chen stood before the viewport of New Singapore Station, staring at what most would consider the greatest embarrassment in the history of human spacecraft design. The UES Enigma hung in space like a quantum physics equation gone wrong. Its hull seemed to shift and blur at random intervals, sensor arrays pointed in contradicting directions, and what appeared to be structural supports crisscrossed its surface in patterns that defied engineering logic. "Beautiful, isn't she?" The soft voice of Dr. Maya Patel, the ship's creator, carried no hint of irony. Sarah turned to face the renowned physicist, trying to keep her expression neutral. "Doctor, with all due respect, I've seen derelict ships that look more spaceworthy." "Exactly." Maya's dark eyes sparkled with barely contained excitement. "Tell me, Captain, what do you know about quantum superposition?" "A particle can exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed," Sarah replied, recalling her academy physics. "But what does that have to do with this?" Maya gestured at the enigma. "Humanity is at war with beings who've mastered deterministic mathematics. The Axiom Collective believes they can predict every possible outcome, every tactical decision, every strategic move. Their entire civilization is built on the premise that the universe follows absolute logical patterns." Understanding began to dawn. "And we've built a ship that defies logic. We've built a ship that exists in a state of controlled chaos," Maya corrected. "The Enigma's hull isn't poorly constructed. It's quantum-locked in multiple configurations simultaneously. Those random sensor arrays, they're actually gathering data from parallel probability states. Even the structural supports are hyperdimensional bracing that exists in several spatial configurations at once." Sarah walked closer to the viewport, studying the vessel with new eyes. "But how do we control something like this?" "That's why you're here, Captain." Maya handed her a tablet. "We don't control it, we collaborate with it. The Enigma requires a crew that can think in possibilities rather than absolutes. Every system on that ship operates on principles that would give the Axiom Collective's logic engines an aneurysm." The tablet displayed crew profiles. Lieutenant James "Lucky" Martinez, a helmsman famous for pulling off maneuvers that violated the laws of probability. Dr. Aisha Patel, no relation to Maya, a quantum engineer who approached physics like jazz improvisation. Lieutenant Commander David O'Reilly, a weapons officer who had once won a battle by firing his guns in a pattern based on his daughter's finger painting. "You've assembled a crew of chaos theorists," Sarah observed. "I've assembled a crew of humans," Maya corrected. "The one thing the Axiom Collective could never understand about our species is our ability to function, even thrive, in contradiction. We can hold opposing thoughts simultaneously. We can act on intuition rather than pure logic. We can look at a problem and see solutions that shouldn't work but do." Sarah spent the next week learning to captain a ship that technically existed in several different configurations at once. The bridge itself defied conventional layout. Stations shifted positions based on quantum probability states, requiring officers to operate on instinct rather than muscle memory. The helm responded not just to physical input but to the pilot's intended outcome, making traditional navigation calculations meaningless. Their first test came sooner than expected. 3 Axiom Collective warships dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter's orbit, their crystalline hulls gleaming with mathematical perfection. "Battle stations," Sarah ordered, feeling the Enigma systems respond not just to her command, but to her acceptance of uncertainty. "Lucky, plot and intercept course, dealer's choice." Martins grinned, his hands dancing over controls that shifted beneath his fingers. "Plotting several courses simultaneously, Captain. The axioms won't know which probability track we're actually on until we're right on top of them. Their logic engines are attempting to analyze our configuration," Aisha reported from engineering. "Reading multiple system failures. They think we're falling apart at the seams." The Axiom ships moved with perfect precision, their formations calculated to optimize firing solutions and defensive coverage. They were beautiful in their efficiency, and utterly unprepared for what happened next. All stations, Sarah commanded, feeling the Enigma's quantum systems resonate with her crew's collective intuition. Embrace the chaos. The Enigma moved like a dream given form, its quantum-locked hull shifting through probability states faster than the Axiom's predictive computers could process. Every attempt to target them failed because the ship existed in multiple tactical positions simultaneously, collapsing into a single point of reality only at the moment of attack. Martinez wove through space like a drunk dancer who somehow never missed a step. O'Reilly's weapons fire followed patterns based on weather systems and butterfly migrations. Aisha kept their quantum core stable by humming old Earth jazz standards. The first Axiom ship fell before its logical systems could compute what was happening. The second tried to retreat but found itself firing at probability shadows, while the Enigma's very real weapons tore through its perfect crystalline hull. The third managed to escape, its sensors overwhelmed by data that contradicted itself. "Damage report?" Sarah asked, knowing the answer but following protocol anyway. "Define damage," Aisha replied cheerfully. "We exist in several states of repair simultaneously. But if you're asking if we're combat effective, absolutely. The Axioms are broadcasting on all frequencies," Communications Officer Park reported. "They're demanding we explain ourselves. Their logic engines are claiming we're an impossibility." Sarah smiled, watching the quantum probability fields shimmer around her ship. "Send them a copy of Alice in Wonderland, and tell them to start with that. Humanity's just getting started." Because in the end, that was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to look at an impossible problem and say, why not? To take logic and twist it until it broke, then keep going. To build a ship that shouldn't work, crew it with people who didn't think like computers, and turn chaos itself into a weapon. The Enigma hung in space, its quantum-locked hull shifting through possibilities like a dream. Proof that sometimes the best way to win a war isn't to play by the rules. It's to change the game entirely. Logic's blind spot. The Axiom Collective's command nexus was experiencing what could only be described as a mathematical crisis. Supreme Logic Node Axiom Prime stood before the assembled council, its crystalline form refracting light in patterns that expressed severe computational distress. "The data cannot be reconciled," Axiom Prime declared, projecting the battle footage of the UES Enigma. "This vessel operates in direct violation of 17 fundamental laws of physics. Our probability engines have crashed attempting to model its behavior patterns." In the 3 weeks since their first encounter with the Enigma, the collective had lost 12 ships to what their logic engines simply labeled as ERRR, UNDEFINED. The humans had somehow created a weapon that existed in the blind spot of pure reason. Meanwhile, aboard the Enigma, Captain Sarah Chen was dealing with her own form of chaos. The ship's quantum core had started manifesting new behavioral patterns, responding to the crew's emotional states in unexpected ways. "It's like it's learning," Dr. Aisha explained, her hands moving through holographic representations of quantum probability fields. "The more we trust our instincts, the more the ship's systems adapt to work with them." Yesterday, the mess hall rearranged itself into a more efficient layout based on Lieutenant Martinez's craving for coffee. "Should we be concerned?" Sarah asked, watching as a corridor ahead of them shifted through 3 different configurations before settling on one that somehow felt right. "On the contrary," Aisha grinned. "I think we're seeing the emergence of something beautiful. The ship isn't just accepting human unpredictability, it's embracing it." Their conversation was interrupted by tactical alerts. 5 Axiom warships had appeared at the edge of the Ta City colony's defensive perimeter. Unlike previous encounters, these vessels moved with new purpose. "They've adapted their formation," Lieutenant Commander O'Reilly reported from Tactical. "Pattern suggests they're trying to force us into predictable responses." Sarah settled into her command chair, feeling the ship's quantum fields respond to her presence. "They still think there's a pattern to find. Lucky, let's show them how wrong they are. Take us in, freestyle." Martinez's hands danced across his console, which rearranged itself to match his thought patterns. Going quantum jazz, Captain. Hope everyone had a light lunch. The Enigma moved like a leaf in a hurricane. If the leaf could exist in multiple states of motion simultaneously, traditional physics declared their maneuvers impossible. The Axiom's targeting systems rejected the sensor data as corrupted. They're deploying some kind of logic field, Aisha reported, attempting to force local spacetime to conform to classical physics. How does the ship feel about that? Sarah asked. Aisha laughed. Like a poet being told to write in binary. Permission to get creative with our quantum state. Granted. O'Reilly, time to make art. O'Reilly's weapons followed firing patterns based on ancient cave paintings and modern abstract art. Each shot existed in a quantum superposition until impact, making defensive calculations impossible. 2 Axiom ships shattered, their perfect crystalline hulls unable to defend against attacks that approached from multiple probabilistic angles simultaneously. The remaining 3 vessels attempted to establish a containment formation, their logic engines working overtime to impose mathematical order on the space around the Enigma. For a moment, the ship's quantum fields fluctuated. They're trying to force us into a single state of reality, Aisha warned. But they forgot something important about quantum mechanics. The observer effect. Sarah smiled. Lucky, show them why that's a problem. Martine is engaged what the crew had started calling the Schrödinger maneuver. The Enigma appeared to occupy multiple positions simultaneously, each one equally real until observed. The Axiom ship's attempts to track them only collapsed their quantum state into the worst possible position for the Axioms. 3 more crystalline warships reduced to glittering debris in space, their logical perfection shattered by weapons that ignored the very concept of certainty. In the aftermath, as the crew conducted their unusual version of damage assessment, questioning whether damage in one quantum state affected others, Sarah received a priority communication from Earth Command. The Axioms are pulling back across all fronts, Admiral Joe's hologram reported. Their entire strategic approach appears to be undergoing revision. Whatever you're doing out there, Captain, it's working. They can't fight what they can't comprehend. Permission to speak freely, Admiral. Granted. We're not just fighting them. We're challenging their entire worldview. Every time we take the Enigma into battle, we're not just winning through superior firepower. We're winning because we're comfortable with something they can never accept, that sometimes the universe simply doesn't make sense. And that's why they'll never be able to replicate the Enigma. The Admiral nodded. They can't build what they can't understand. After the transmission ended, Sarah stood at the viewport, watching quantum probability fields shimmer around her ship like aurora borealis. The Enigma wasn't just a warship, it was humanity's spirit given form. Unpredictable, irrational at times, but capable of achieving the impossible precisely because it didn't try to make everything make sense. Somewhere out there, the Axiom Collective's logic engines were probably still trying to compute how a ship could turn chaos into victory. They would never find the answer because they were asking the wrong question. The real secret wasn't in the quantum mechanics or the probability fields. The secret was in the human heart's ability to look at the impossible and say, "Watch me." Calculated chaos. The Enigma's success had sparked a revolution in human military thinking. As Captain Sarah Chen stood in Earth Command's strategic center, she watched holographic displays showing the construction of 5 new quantum state vessels. Each one different, each one impossible, each one distinctly human. They're calling it the Paradox Fleet, Admiral Zhao explained, gesturing to the ships under construction. But we've discovered something interesting. When we tried to duplicate the Enigma exactly, we failed. Each ship seems to develop its own personality, for lack of a better term. Because they're responding to human consciousness, Dr. Maya Patel interjected, joining them at the display. Each crew's unique thought patterns create different quantum configurations. We're not building ships anymore. We're growing them. Sarah understood. The Enigma had evolved far beyond its original design, shaped by its crew's collective imagination. Last week, the ship's mess hall had started serving food that people were craving before they knew they wanted it, existing in a quantum state of all possible menu items until someone walked in. The Axioms have responded with a new strategy. Admiral Zhou continued, shifting the display to show enemy movements. They're deploying what they call reality anchors, devices designed to force quantum probability fields into single states. Let me guess, Sarah smiled. They're perfectly predictable. Exactly. And that's why you're here. We need the Enigma to test their defenses. Show us what happens when uncertainty meets forced certainty. The mission began 3 days later. The Enigma approached the Axiom's new defensive line at the edge of the Orion Arm. 3 reality anchors hung in space like crystalline stars, their perfect geometric forms pulsing with what the Axioms considered pure logic. They're trying to establish a zone of absolute certainty, Asia reported from engineering. Local spacetime is being forced into classical physics patterns. Our quantum fields are feeling itchy. Lucky, Sarah called to her helmsman. How's our maneuverability? Martinez's fingers danced across his shifting console. Like trying to dance underwater, Captain. But you know what they say about water. It always finds a way through. O'Reilly, what are we looking at for weapons? The tactical officer studied his probability displays. They're trying to force our quantum weapons into single states. But, he grinned, they forgot about wave-particle duality. We can work with that. Sarah leaned forward in her command chair, feeling the ship's quantum fields respond to her crew's collective determination. Aisha, remember that paper you were telling me about? Schrödinger's cat. The thought experiment where a cat is both alive and dead until observed. Aisha's voice carried a note of excitement. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? If they want to force us into a single state of reality. Sarah smiled. Let's give them all possible states at once. All stations. Initiate Protocol Schrödinger. The Enigma's response defied description. Instead of fighting against the reality anchor's attempt to force certainty, the ship embraced it, all possible certainties simultaneously. The quantum core pulsed with possibilities, each one equally real until observed. Reality anchors are attempting to lock us down, Aisha reported, her voice filled with wonder. But they can't decide which us to lock onto. We're everywhere and nowhere. Martinez laughed as he guided the ship through probability space. It's like trying to nail down a shadow. The harder they try to pin us to one reality, the more realities we inhabit. The Axiom defenders responded with increasing desperation. Their logic engines, attempting to track all possible states of the Enigma simultaneously, began to overload. The reality anchors, designed to force order, instead became the focus points for increasing chaos as quantum probability waves reflected and amplified off their perfect surfaces. Their entire defensive network is destabilizing, O'Reilly reported with satisfaction. They created a resonance chamber for quantum uncertainty, and we're playing one hell of a symphony. The first reality anchor shattered, its crystalline structure unable to contain the contradictions it was trying to process. The second followed moments later, its logic engines frozen in an infinite loop of trying to compute infinite possibilities. The third attempted to shut down, but by then, the cascade effect was unstoppable. In the aftermath, as debris that both existed and didn't exist drifted through space, Sarah received a priority transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Jude's hologram appeared, his expression a mixture of awe and amusement. The Axioms are requesting a ceasefire, he announced. Their exact words were, to continue combat against weapons that violate causality would be illogical. Congratulations, Captain. You've created a philosophical crisis in a species that thought they had everything figured out. Sarah looked around her bridge, at the crew that had learned to thrive in uncertainty. Request permission to continue pushing their logical boundaries. Admiral, I think the Enigma has a few more impossible tricks to show them. Granted. And Captain, The other quantum ships are nearly ready. We're calling them the Uncertainty Principle Squadron. Each one different, each one impossible, and all of them very, very human. As the transmission ended, Sarah watched quantum probability fields dance across the viewport. The axioms had built their civilization on the premise that everything could be predicted, calculated, and controlled. They never understood that the true power of humanity lay in its embrace of the unknown, its ability to thrive in contradiction, its talent for turning chaos itself into an art form. The enigma hung in space, simultaneously existing in all possible states of victory, a testament to the beautiful impossibility of the human spirit. The pattern breakers. The quantum shipyards above Mars buzzed with impossible activity. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the Enigma's observation deck as 5 new vessels took shape, each one a unique expression of controlled chaos. The UES paradox, uncertainty, quantum dream, probability storm, and strange attractor, humanity's answer to the axiom collective's perfect logic. "They're beautiful," Dr. Maya Patel said, joining her at the viewport, each one developing its own quantum signature based on its crew's collective consciousness. "The axioms still can't comprehend how we're doing it, because they're still looking for the pattern," Sarah replied. "They don't understand that the pattern is that there is no pattern." The quantum ship's development had revealed something extraordinary. Each crew's unique thought patterns, personalities, and even their interpersonal dynamics created distinct quantum configurations. Captain Rodriguez of the Paradox had a background in jazz improvisation. His ship's quantum fields fluctuated like a cosmic bebop solo. Commander Walsh's love of abstract art had the uncertainty painting impossible patterns across probability space. Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert. The Axiom Collective had launched what they called their final logical solution, a massive fleet of new warships designed to operate in perfect mathematical harmony. "They've created a neural network linking all their ships," Aisha reported from engineering. "Every vessel moves and fights as part of a single, perfectly coordinated entity. Their logic engines are working in parallel to try to predict and counter all possible quantum states." Sarah smiled. The axioms still didn't get it. "Signal the squadron. It's time for humanity's greatest performance. Complete improvisation." The 6 quantum ships moved to intercept the Axiom fleet, each one operating on principles that defied conventional physics. The Enigma led the formation, though formation was hardly the right word for what they were doing. "All ships, execute Protocol Jazz," Sarah commanded. "Everyone play your own tune, but listen to each other. Let's show them what human harmony really means." What followed was either the most brilliant tactical engagement in human history or complete chaos, depending on whether you tried to make sense of it. The quantum ships moved like a jazz band in space, each one improvising their own movements while somehow remaining in perfect synchronization with the others. The Paradox wove through space like a saxophone solo, its quantum fields creating ripples in probability that the other ships surfed upon. The Uncertainty painted abstract patterns with its weapon fire, creating geometric impossibilities that trapped axiom vessels in logical paradoxes. The Quantum Dream phased between realities like a drummer keeping time across multiple dimensions. "Their neural network is attempting to adapt," Lieutenant Commander O'Reilly reported, watching the Axiom fleet's increasingly desperate maneuvers. "But they're trying to find harmony through logic. They don't understand that our harmony comes from embracing discord." The Axiom fleet's perfect formation began to break down as their logic engines struggled to compute the quantum ship's seemingly random actions. Each attempt to predict one ship's movements was invalidated by how it interacted with the other's quantum fields. "They're trying to establish a baseline reality," Aisha called out, attempting to force their mathematical models onto local spacetime. "Perfect," Sarah grinned. "All ships, initiate protocol contradiction. Let's show them what happens when you try to force order on chaos." The Quantum Squadron responded with a maneuver that would have made Einstein weep. Each ship projected conflicting quantum states that resonated with each other, creating a cascade of probability waves that overwhelmed the Axiom's attempts to impose logical order. The Enigma played its part in the quantum symphony, its movements guided by the intuition and creativity of its crew. Martinez flew patterns based on butterfly migrations. O'Reilly's targeting solutions followed the Fibonacci sequence in reverse. Aisha kept their quantum core stable by modeling it on the chaos mathematics of weather systems. Their neural network is experiencing cascade failures, O'Reilly reported with satisfaction. They can't maintain computational coherence when every calculation leads to a different, impossible result. The Axiom fleet's perfect formation dissolved into confusion as ship after ship fell to weapons that struck from multiple quantum states simultaneously. Their attempts to retreat were hampered by probability fields that made every possible escape route simultaneously real and impossible. In the aftermath, as the quantum squadron regrouped among the glittering debris of the Axiom fleet, Sarah received a transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Joe's hologram appeared, his expression one of barely contained amazement. "The Axioms are broadcasting on all frequencies," he reported. "They're requesting not just a ceasefire, but diplomatic contact." Their exact words were, "We must understand how humanity has transcended the limitations of logic. Congratulations, Captain. You haven't just won battles. You've forced an entire civilization to question its fundamental beliefs." Sarah looked at her bridge crew, then at the quantum squadron floating in formation, or anti-formation, around them. "Tell them we're ready to talk, Admiral. But first, let's show them one more thing. Squadron, execute protocol possibility." The 6 quantum ships moved in concert, their probability fields merging to create a display that existed in all possible states simultaneously, a dance of pure potential that served as both celebration and demonstration. It was beautiful, impossible, and perfectly human. Because in the end, humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its weapons. It was its ability to look at the rules of the universe and say, yes, but what if? To take impossibility itself and turn it into art. To find harmony in chaos and strength in uncertainty. The quantum squadron hung in space, each ship a testament to the beautiful impossibility of the human spirit, proof that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to embrace the fact that not every problem needs a logical solution. Symphony of disorder. The Earth Diplomatic Center had never seen anything quite like this. In a room designed to host representatives from across the galaxy, Captain Sarah Chen stood before a delegation of the Axiom Collective. Their crystalline forms refracted light in patterns that somehow conveyed both curiosity and computational distress. "Explain," the lead delegate, Prime Calculator Axiom Vector, requested. "How does one command chaos?" Sarah smiled. "That's the point. We don't command it. We dance with it." 6 months had passed since the Quantum Squadron's victory, and humanity had spent that time not building weapons, but bridges. The Enigma and its sister ships now served as laboratories for a grand experiment in cross-species understanding. "We have analyzed your quantum ships for 3 standard cycles," Axiom Vector continued. "Our most advanced logic engines cannot replicate their function. This defies fundamental universal constants." "No," Dr. Maya Patil interjected, stepping forward. "It defies your understanding of those constants. The universe is stranger than pure logic can comprehend." The diplomatic session was interrupted by an emergency alert. Long-range sensors had detected something massive approaching the solar system, a gravitational anomaly that defied both human and Axiom understanding. "All ships, prepare for emergency response," Admiral Joe's voice echoed through the facility. "We're detecting something impossible." Sarah exchanged glances with Axiom Vector. "Want to see how humanity handles a true unknown?" The crystalline being's surface rippled with what might have been agreement. "We will observe. Perhaps. There is logic in illogic." Within hours, the combined fleet of human quantum ships and Axiom vessels assembled at the edge of the solar system. The gravitational anomaly had resolved into something that strained the limits of comprehension. a massive entity that seemed to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. It's like looking at a quantum probability field given physical form, Asia reported from the Enigma's engineering station. But on a scale that shouldn't be possible. The entity began broadcasting, not in radio waves or light, but in patterns of quantum fluctuation that made the Axiom's logic engines crash and human sensors display impossible readings. It's testing us, Sarah realized. Both of us, humanity and the Axioms together. This isn't a threat, it's a final exam. Agreed, Axiom Vector's voice came through the comm. But how does one respond to that, which denies all logical response? Sarah smiled. We improvise. Together. Your logic, our chaos. Not in opposition, but in harmony. What followed was either the greatest feat of cooperative space-time manipulation in history or the universe's most elaborate dance party. The quantum ships began moving in their characteristic chaos patterns, while the Axiom vessels maintained perfect geometric formations, but instead of conflicting, the two styles began to complement each other. All ships, execute Protocol Symphony. Sarah commanded. Axiom Fleet, maintain your logical frameworks. We'll weave our chaos through them. The Enigma led the Quantum Squadron in a display of controlled disorder, their probability fields interacting with the Axiom's precision formations to create something entirely new. Order and chaos, logic and intuition, certainty and possibility, all flowing together in a dance that transcended traditional physics. The mysterious entity responded, its own quantum patterns shifting in what seemed like appreciation. It began to resonate with the combined fleet's display, amplifying and reflecting their harmony of opposites. It's not just watching, Asia reported in wonder. It's joining in. The quantum fields are. I don't even have words for this. The space around them became a canvas for something that defied description, a merger of mathematical precision and creative improvisation, of logical certainty and quantum possibility. The Axiom ships moved in perfect patterns while the Quantum Squadron wove impossible variations through their formations, creating a display that demonstrated the strength of both approaches. Finally, the entity transmitted again, this time in a form both species could understand. It was a message as simple as it was profound. Balance achieved. Evolution continues. As the entity departed, leaving behind readings that would keep scientists of both species busy for decades, Sarah turned to the hologram of Axiom Vector on her bridge. I think, the crystalline being said slowly, we have both learned something profound. Logic without creativity is stagnant. Chaos without structure is meaningless. But together, Sarah finished, we create something greater than either could achieve alone. A symphony of order and disorder. The aftermath brought changes nobody could have predicted. The Axiom Collective began incorporating controlled elements of uncertainty into their designs, while humanity learned to balance its creative chaos with logical frameworks. The quantum ships evolved further, incorporating crystalline elements that somehow made their impossible operations even more impossible. 1 year later, Sarah stood again at the observation deck of Earth Station, watching the first graduating class of the new Joint Fleet Academy, human and Axiom crews training together to operate a new generation of ships that merged both species' philosophies. They still ask me sometimes, Maya said, joining her at the viewport, how we knew it would work, how we were so certain that uncertainty was the answer. Sarah watched as a training vessel, its hull both crystalline and quantum shifted, performed maneuvers that were simultaneously perfectly precise and beautifully random. We didn't know, she replied. We couldn't know. That's what made it perfect. Because in the end, the greatest discoveries don't come from following the rules or breaking them, but from understanding that the rules themselves are just another possibility in an infinite universe of possibilities. The Enigma and its legacy hadn't just changed space warfare or interstellar politics. It had changed how two civilizations understood reality itself. And somewhere out there, in the quantum probability fields that danced between the stars, The universe smiled at the beauty of opposites united, of order and chaos in perfect, impossible harmony.